Welcome back, Screenagers, to the Canon. My name is Raf. We've got another amazing episode lined up for you today. We've got another amazing movie, and I'm very happy to be inviting back to the show two of my good friends, two very smart guys who know a lot about movies. One of them is even a doctor. He is a... I guess the way that I said it, it sounds like he's a medical doctor, but no.
You set it up like it was a dramatic build-up. Like, he is even a doctor.
So we've got Matt and Simon back on the show. You may have heard their episode last year talking to us about Night of the Living Dead, which was amazing and fun and spectacular. So they decided to be gracious enough to come back to talk about Halloween. So we are ending the spooky season with the ultimate spooky movie, right? Halloween is, if you're listening to this episode on the day that it came out, Halloween is tomorrow. You might be listening to it on Halloween today, which who knows how time works. But Matt, Simon, welcome back. How are you guys doing?
Dude, thanks for having us back, man. Super stoked to be back on the pod.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked. I'm doing another absolute classic movie and like a Halloween banger for sure. I mean, this is like the all-time Halloween movie, right? So
Yeah, I mean, it kind of has to be if you name it after the holiday.
Yeah.
yeah, or the holiday named after the movie. I don't know.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. I've never actually thought about that.
It didn't change to Halloween. It used to be just All Hallows Eve. Movie came out. Then they're like, fuck that. It's Halloween. Sorry, I forgot it. Can we swear? Like, what's the...
we try to say somewhat family friendly, but
okay, I'll dial it back.
Yeah,
coming out the gate hot.
Yeah, hey, that's fine. It was that one needed a flourish. It needed the flourish of the F.
I'm an auteur. I'm the Michael Bay of profanity.
I don't know if that's something. Is that a good thing?
I see. I think of it as it's unnecessary. But man, is it fun.
Okay, that's the perfect description.
Here we go.
That's amazing. So, okay, we've got these lovely gents back. One of them is even a doctor. Before we talk about the movie, this is probably better suited for the discussion next week. But I've been thinking, Halloween, there's usually a lot of discussion about favorite candies, all that stuff. But I think we're just going to fast forward and go straight into soup season because
okay, I'm down.
I've been wondering a lot. I haven't had a chance to really talk to people about soup season. So I'm curious to hear if you guys are soup guys. And if you are, what are your favorite soups?
Oh, this is a good question.
So I've been a little under the weather lately, and like for whatever reason, my wife's family recipe of chicken noodle soup will solve anything. It's incredible. It's just egg noodles. They just they just boil the chicken in there, and it's cozy. It's home, and like it makes me feel exactly the way that 1980s Campbell's soup commercial makes the little snowman. That like times 1,000. So I am a big fan of that specific chicken noodle soup. But my second, if we're talking soup season, something that hearty, makes you feel good, warms you up, but also fills you up. I love a good New England clam chowder at like a diner. If a diner does New England clam chowder really well, and typically they're only like, we only got clam chowder on Fridays. That's the sign, like that's going to be good clam chowder.
Okay. I'm not the biggest chowder person. I do love a chicken noodle soup because I do like there's something about like you're not feeling so good, but like you're with your family and there's something like restorative about that. But my favorite soup is like there's this really simple like hot and sour soup recipe. So like a bunch of mushrooms and like veggies and tofu in it, and like a lot of peppers and stuff and a little vinegar, make it like hot and sour. But I made this when my spouse, Margot, was sick. This was spring 2021, and they were like staying home. They were like, I'm just so sick. Like, I don't know what's wrong. And I was like, yo, I'll make you soup. Like, it's all good. Spent the whole day with them, made this soup with them, and then it turned out that they had COVID that whole time. Uh, and I feel like the soup made me not get COVID because I ate it like sitting next to a person that did have COVID. So I feel like it had some healing power in it for sure.
Wow. Not quite magical soup, but there's some
Mystical.
But
there's some medical benefits to.
Well,
to
I
the
mean,
soup.
he is a doctor. I am a doctor.
He is even a doctor.
No one should be getting any medical advice from this episode, by the way. That should be like a disclaimer.
Put a
warning.
precursor, whatever the warning is.
No, I think that's good medical advice. If you don't want to get COVID, eat
soup.
Simon's soup, specifically the hot and sour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm game with that. Someone
Amazing.
should tell Dr. Fauci about that. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, what does that guy know?
Better than ivermectin. I'll take hot and sour soup over bleach in my veins.
I feel like that's fair. Is it too early? Is Halloween too early for soup season? Like, should we still just be discussing candies and stuff? Or do you think, like, what if you went to a house trick-or-treating and, like, Matt, you're taking your son trick-or-treating and some lady's like, here's a container of frozen soup.
Well, I would be a bit disappointed because like the whole premise of Halloween is like trick or treat. I don't think of soups as a treat. There might be some sort of soup, like an ice cream soup. I don't know. That just sounds gross. But like,
Just melted ice cream. Like,
Yeah.
Just melted ice cream.
yeah.
It's
So
just
like,
milk.
yeah. If I was given
It's a bowl of warm milk.
if I was given a frozen container of soup for Halloween, I'd be like, this is, you don't have like just like some Twizzlers or something, like, I don't, or some of those random nondescript strawberry candies like that everyone has. What the official name's like Bon, whatever.
Yeah.
I would be upset. Now, outside of that, I'm all for it being soup season. Like, I think soup season slowly starts to ramp up right after Labor Day. That is
Okay.
my internal clock for soup season.
Yeah.
Where it's socially acceptable to order soup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think for me, because like I like soups and I really like chili too, right? Like stews and stuff, right? Stuff
Big
that you're gonna
chili
like
guy.
braise or like cook, like simmer for a little bit. Like it's gotta be getting into the 40s at night, right? Once it's getting into the 40s at night, like to me it's soup season. Like you want to warm up the house a little bit. If the low is only in the 60s, I'm like, well, I don't want to, simmer chili for an hour. Like fuck that. It's probably still got the air conditioner on. I like it cold.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, you guys both live in upstate New York, where it probably gets a little chillier, a little earlier than maybe some other places. So, like, around Labor Day sort of makes sense. I think for me, being in like the New York City area, like around now, end of October, to me is when soup season starts. I'm not a big soup guy, but I am a big chili guy. So, like, I feel like I can't really make, like, I don't know if I want Halloween chili, but
no, that doesn't sound good. But like, it does, because like,
but it also kind of does. Like, imagine like if you have like a nice chilly Halloween night, right? You're on the couch, you finish with all the trick or treaters have come and gone. You've had your chili on all day, and you sit down to watch John Carpenter's Halloween with a bowl of chili. You got some cheese and some oyster crackers in there, and you have
put
all
oyster crackers in your chili. That's interesting.
Give it some crunch.
Yeah, sometimes for sure.
I usually do tortilla chips in my chili, but I will accept the oyster crackers.
I mean, to each their own, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the beautiful thing about chili and soup is that you can make it your own.
Now, gentlemen, I feel like we're completely glossing over a very, very underrated subsect of the soup genre. How do we feel about gumbo? Because
gumbo. I'm actually not a big gumbo guy.
All right. Now, so when my dad makes turkey gumbo, it's obviously right around Thanksgiving. It's all the leftovers. So like that is the thing.
Oh yeah.
So, but like gumbo is I don't know like I don't know from an actual description base what makes gumbo different than a chili, like, or maybe it's just the meat or the consistency.
I think it's a gumbo. Don't you like you have to set a gumbo with a roux, right? Like you got to do
Yeah.
like yeah. I don't know. I've watched some videos on YouTube.
I've watched
designed
Ratatouille. Like,
I'm
there's a
not-
roux. I got a sous chef. He does the beef braise.
If you
know,
don't
he's
have
got
a
the
rat
loins.
under your hat, I mean, you're not making
Is gumbo
right?
is gumbo also? We're so off topic, and
I know,
I
I'm
promise
sorry.
we'll get to Halloween.
You're
at
getting
some
there. You're
point.
getting there.
Yeah. So is gumbo also like tomato based?
No, it's not tomato based. I don't think.
So maybe that's what makes it different than a chili, because
Okay,
with
chili's
chilies you're using
tomato-based,
like
yeah.
a tomato paste, tomato sort of base in that.
Yeah, you can make a white chili, but it kind of becomes more like then
Or
it
is
becomes
it
like
beans?
chicken noodle
Is beans?
soup.
Oh no, beans can be in gumbo.
White people just taking everything. Why does
Yeah.
it have to? Why do we have to have white
Wait a
chili?
minute. So does that make tomato? Does that make tomato soup just virgin chili?
In a way, but I think there are other ingredients in tomato soup that you wouldn't necessarily put into a chili.
Yeah, I think
Tomato. That's it.
No, sometimes you'll like mix in some cheeses and like
You put cheese in chili. You just said that.
no, but you don't like you're making the soup with the cheese as opposed to putting the cheese onto the chili.
I follow. Okay. I
Tomatoes-
retract my.
tomato soup is like a bridge to soup season, though. You know, because it's like it's not really like that's just like cold
It's the
ready.
gateway. It's the gateway
Yeah.
drug to soup season.
Soup season. You start after Labor Day, you're like, oh, it's cold. I'm gonna have a tomato soup and grilled cheese. And then boom, you're simmering chili for 6 hours on a October Sunday. Fucking,
I like that. No, I like the progression.
Yeah, I like
because
where you're
because
at.
tomato soup is very basic. So that you're like, nah, it's just tomatoes. It's whatever. It's fresh from the summer. Like
Yeah,
it's still
it's like a
summery
sauce.
vibe. Yeah.
Yeah,
My Sunday sauce. I got a sauce going.
How funny would this movie be if it were all Italian Americans and not Midwesterners? Michael freaking Myers.
Isn't Haddonfield is the name of like the town the writer, one of the writers is from, and it's actually from New Jersey. There is a Haddonfield, New Jersey. So
yeah.
all I'm saying is mix good. I would love to see like Martin Scorsese and John Carpenter just do Goodfellas Halloween.
Yeah.
What, you think I'm a funny guy? You think I'm funny? Stab.
We could just have the bear Halloween crossover, right? Like if Michael Myers just shows up,
Cousin.
you know, when Jamie Lee Curtis is
Oh, that's
ruining
right.
Christmas or Thanksgiving. Or
Yes.
whatever.
7 fishes. I need hands.
Yeah.
And he's just standing there with the knife.
The food inspector comes and they're like, you can't have this knife in the kitchen. It's covered in blood.
This is human blood.
It's covered in human blood. You cannot have this.
This is a murder weapon.
You can't have this chopping your carrots. It's not good.
That's the extra flavor, man.
How do we get back to the movie?
I think
Right,
you're
hold
there.
on.
Knife covered in
Do
blood.
we
Knife
think-
covered in blood. You're there.
Do we think Michael Myers is a gumbo guy, a chili guy?
Okay, that's a great question. I think he might be a split pea guy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or Italian Wedding, to bring it back to the
Um,
Goodfellas.
I like that. Now, what kind of soup do you think they served at the state hospital that he was at?
That's what I was going to say, because he's
think-
institutionalized, right?
Yeah, I think that split
affects-
pea, that
things,
split
yeah.
pea, I feel like is on point.
Yeah, they were definitely serving up some split pea in there.
Yeah.
Definitely, without a doubt. Not even a question.
There's no doubt in my mind. There's so many people
Hey,
who
I
are
would-
listening to this. Like, all I want is like a smart breakdown of the film Halloween, and instead they're getting what kind of
Just
soup?
soup talk for
do
30
you think-
minutes.
What kind of soup do you think Michael Myers would eat? But I will say, that is what makes this show stand out from the rest. We're not doing the same old, we could hit you with the trivia that the mask that Michael Myers wears is a, Captain Kirk mask that they painted over and slicked the hair back on. Thanks, Matt, for that. But you can go to any show that's talking about Halloween, and they're going to be mentioning that. They're not
Particularly for
asking
Halloween.
the important questions about soup.
I mean, is that why he broke out in the first place? He
He was-
tired
he
of
had-
the split piece.
he
That
split
was the leading.
He said, "I'm going to split and peace out of here."
I'm out of here.
And I'm going to go murder some teenagers.
Yeah.
With a belly full of split pea soup. See, this movie, like, the minute you introduce that fact, now the next time any of us watches that movie, we're going to have that thought, yo, dude's got a belly full of split pea soup right now.
Yeah.
How's that guy running so fast?
He's a big boy, dude. I mean,
big guy.
It makes you understand why he was so angry, why he's going on this murderous rampage. It might be because he is so morally opposed to teenagers having premarital sex and he's killing them for that. Or it might be because he was sick of all this split pea soup. Who's to
I think
say?
we're onto something. We haven't touched that. We haven't touched
Who
that.
is to say?
Let's split this pea open, Raph.
All right. So let's take a few steps back, rein ourselves in, and sort of recenter this conversation about this amazing movie before we dive into more, split pea talk.
Okay.
When did you guys first come across this movie? Is this something that you've watched on the holiday since childhood, or did you come to it more recently? I think, Simon, I kind of want to start with you as you smoothly grab your Miller Lite.
This is a Utica club, actually, but
excuse me.
You were close, but
it looks similar.
Yeah. I would say I was a little later to Halloween. I feel like it wasn't always a classic for me. I feel like I saw other derivative, and I don't say derivative in to insult those movies, but like I saw other slashers before I saw Halloween, right? And the way Halloween was introduced to me was as the origin of the slasher, right? And as one that is sort of the granddaddy of them all. And I think for a while I resisted watching it maybe, but I probably didn't watch it until senior year of high school, maybe, a little later than some people. And now I feel like I've seen it a million times, but I don't know.
I definitely came into it a little bit later, but I mean, I remember my first quote unquote introduction to the idea of Halloween. I know that sounds super, super I know that sounds very nuanced, but the idea of Halloween it was odd because growing up in our era, you hear the name Mike Myers and you think Austin Powers. You think Saturday Night Live. So when one of my brother's friends, I was over at their house. They were good family friends. We would hang out. He goes, "Maddie, you want to see Michael Myers?" And I go, "Yeah, dude. Yeah, baby. Oh, shagadelic." And there's this terrifying Captain James T. Kirk mask, which I didn't know. Who is this? So immediately I shut down as an 8-year-old and I go, "That's terrifying. I don't want to know what that is." But similar to what Simon mentioned of it was so pervasive in the cultural zeitgeist of slashers. Michael Myers as a character and the idea of the quintessential slasher, it's been said many, many times before, it is a part of the metaphorical Mount Rushmore of horror. Mm-hmm. And easily slashers, but horror in general, definitely paved the way. So in terms of actually sitting down to watched the film. I think I was in college. I had a professor who was doing his dissertation on horror films, and like I was intrigued by it because he demystified it in terms of like his whole argument was about what makes up a slasher film, the teenage kids and like what are the motives of the killer, so on and so forth. So that demystified it for me. And also like being older, I'm like, okay, it's a movie from 1978, right? 78. It practical effects, it's probably not going to be that gory. Like I had seen Signs in second grade, and that scarred me far worse than watching Halloween.
That's a scarring movie. We should limit that. Right? It's a scarring movie.
But all in all, my introduction into it again, not being a guy that seeks out horror or slasher films, it doesn't really interest me. The fact that this was one of, I mean, it is a quintessential thing. It came across my, we'll call it lexicon. It entered my realm, and I understand. Like immediately, I was like, "Oh, I get it." Like this is much like when we discussed Night of the Living Dead. This is the blueprint. I get it. Like I can see why this is so revered as the epicenter for everything that came after.
Yeah, it truly lays the groundwork. So, okay, I guess, Matt, you came to it in a bit earlier than Simon and myself because you did have that scarring watch as an 8-year-old.
Yeah. No, I was just confronted by the character,
not the actual movie.
But not the actual movie. So like I was aware of like Michael Myers, but like it for probably a good like 10 years, not 10 years, for a good like 5 years, from like 8 to 13, I didn't understand why they would name a horror movie villain after a comedian.
After a Canadian comedian.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is like when I was a kid, like it was so much. I watched a lot of comedies when I was a kid. I feel like I didn't watch a lot of horror movies, but when we were kids, the scary movies were big kind of comedy movies, and so like a lot of that was like about the tropes of slashers. But then when I was like 13, I thought it was like referencing Scream, but I had no idea, right? That Scream was, of course, referencing all of these movies. It's like the whole point. So I felt like I had to like work backwards through this, like, I don't know, parody thing to understand, oh, like this is where it came from, I guess. I don't know.
You're like getting all these references but you're like so many layers removed from where the references
the source material.
Yeah.
That is an odd thing of like our generation, right? Like had we been teenagers, 16, 17 in 1978, like earth shattering. Everything after that though has been a derivative and now exists. So like our concept of horror, my preconceived notion of horror is a lot of gore, a lot of slashing, a lot of monsters, just absolute grotesquerie. But what I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but what I really enjoyed both on my first view in college and again, I watched it kind of within the past week leading up to this podcast, just to kind of refamiliarize myself. It has this beautiful terror. It's not just horror. It is a masterclass in terror, and we can definitely later on discuss more about what I liked about it, and I'm sure everyone has said the same thing, but that is what I think truly sets it apart, and it's nuts because it was pretty much the beginning. I mean, I think the only other slashers before this were Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Is that 74?
I think that was like 74-ish. But just again, really like, followed like the same sort of like template.
Yes, exactly. Like, yeah, there's this era of slashers where it's like when I talk about the Mount Rushmore, you're like, oh yeah, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger. Like, it's this. Oh, they're after teens who are committing premarital. Like, this whole idea of debauchery.
Mm-hmm.
That is their key victim group. So anyway, I kind of lost track of where I was going with this. Simon, I'm going to kick it to you.
I'm going to say that all of these rules, it's really fascinating working backwards to like understand, okay, wait, so like what are these gender norms? Like what's going on here? I will say working backwards, none of this is going to make Scary Movie funnier if you go watch it, by the way. It's just like doesn't exactly work that way, but it's interesting, you know?
It is okay, I guess not with Scary Movies so much, but this month on the show, we have already discussed Psycho, which some people would say like is the OG slasher movie, although it doesn't really follow the template that like this movie lays out that is then like followed throughout the 80s for like what we understand slashers to be more generally. And we've also discussed Scream, which sort of like exists on the back end of the genre as like the ultimate self-referential version of it that's like hyper aware. And it's kind of like, hey, like this is the last hurrah for this genre. Like we've done all of it. So this is it. And then now we're talking about now we're talking about Halloween rather, which is very much so like, this is to me at least like the pinnacle of it, because this is like what really serves as like the template for what Psycho originally like kind of set out with, 17 years prior, and then what Scream is doing almost 20 years later. Like to me, this is the granddaddy of the genre. But it is interesting to think about like all three of those movies sort of like existing in this weird like Phil Jackson 1990s Bulls triangle offense sort of vibe.
No, that's a good. I like that. Yeah. No, it's spot on.
With that, like one just like weird thing with all three of these movies is the boyfriend character in Psycho. His last name is Loomis, and then obviously the Dr. Loomis character in this movie is very much so a reference to that guy. And then in Scream, Billy's last name is also Loomis.
Yeah. Well, and there's also what's it? Jamie Lee Curtis is Janet Leigh's daughter.
Yeah.
So that's the other connection.
So you're kind of playing with that, right? Because like in 77, people know that Jamie Lee Curtis is Janet Leigh's daughter, and everyone is aware of like what happened in Psycho. So you're kind of like thinking like, okay, like is this character going to get killed off midway through the movie or something? So, right, like now we think about like what this movie sets up in terms of like rules for final girls and all that stuff. But at the time, I'm sure people were definitely thinking like, oh, this is just going to do what Psycho did to this character. So in a way, it was like kind of like oddly subverting expectations, even though we don't think about this movie as one that subverts expectations.
Right, because it's the rule to us, right? Which is, of course, like how it shows up so like line by line in Scream. Is they're like, oh, these are the rules. These are the rules. They're all Halloween rules, right? So that is interesting.
I feel like Matt's bursting. You got something?
No, I mean, you're taking the words out of my mouth. I found I didn't know that about her mom being in Psycho. So like because I was under, and maybe I'm completely off base. Was her dad Tony Curtis?
Yes, I think I was looking this up while I said that, because I was like, I feel like I know that, but I want to make sure.
I think her dad produced Some Like It Hot and many other great successful movies. So
she was a Nepo baby.
She was like the OG Nepo baby,
but had to pay for her own costumes and stuff. What a shame! What a shame!
Did she?
It's an indie movie, Matt. It's an indie movie.
Yeah, one of the best indie movies of all time, easily. Um,
Well, and that is the thing, like thinking about it as like setting up the rules, like the thing that, and we don't have to get like too in the weeds yet, but like one of the things that struck me when I rewatched Halloween was like, it's a beautiful movie,
mhm.
Mhm.
right? Like it looks like a beautiful movie. Like John Carpenter went to USC. He's like a filmmaker, like, like he's not some scrappy dude, right? This is not Night of the Living Dead, right? And it's definitely not Texas Chainsaw, right? Like it's not that like grimy, gory film. Like it's a good looking movie. And that I think like the sleekness of it like kind of plays a role in the fact that it like sets the standard. I don't know how to describe that more, but I
Well,
think
that
it's
is
important.
it is like once you find out how tight of a shoestring budget this film had, I was again blown away. I always go to either the editing or the lighting or the framing or just any of the cinematography stuff. And what I mean, right off the bat, one, you talk about the use of POV, and it technically wasn't Steadicam. It was like a rival. I remember researching this,
Oh, really?
but like it was basically Steadicam. It was a
Mhm.
rival, and that's how they use it. I'm like that. Okay, one, this technique, awesome, but again, like the lighting in the low lighting scenarios for a low budget film to look as crisp, and everything is lit with purpose. Like everything, especially you talk about the scene where it's closer to the end of the film where they're upstairs. They kind of had their first bout with the needle, but like Jamie Lee Curtis is kind of trying to escape, and she's getting chased. I think it's either before or after the closet scene. It's right around there. But you just see kind of it's I don't want to say silhouette, it's the inverse silhouette where you can see the white face just appear in the dark background. For that to be done in a film with that low of a budget is incredible. That like truly a tip of the cap, because shooting in low light period sucks. So very very purposeful, and like all the shadows, like it felt very purposeful. It didn't feel it probably was a pain in the ass to try to accomplish. So I can't imagine the nightmare scenarios. Either that or he's just that good and was like, yeah, this is how we're going to light it. And boom, it is a genius at lighting that kind of situation. So for that to be done, everything to look crisp, and the pacing of the editing to be done so well really is a testament of that. That's like a bargain. And that's why I think like some of the kitschier things might be overlooked. There are a few kitschy, like the lightning effect in the beginning
Yeah.
of the film at the state hospital, and like you're like, oh, they just kind of flashed to white, okay, but like that's the only thing that stuck out to me. The rest of it was truly just a masterclass in purposeful lighting and setting the mood and tone through light and lens. Who's a doctor now?
PhD, dude, just like that. But I do think that's true, and it is a difference of like because in the '60s and like early '70s, yeah, you have some like gory movies, and you have some movies that then like retroactively we might call slashers, right? But they're kind of exploitation films, right? Like in Texas Chainsaw, it's kind of an exploitation film, and something like Night of the Living Dead, which is like shown mostly at drive-in. Same with Texas Chainsaw, right? They're shot on 16 millimeter often. They have a super, super grainy look, right? I mean, yes, they do stuff with that sort of documentary realism, but they're not sleek looking movies. And Halloween is a sleek looking movie. And the fact that Carpenter went to USC and they shot the film in Pasadena, like, probably plays a role in that, right? Like, it's a gorgeous, little leafy suburb, right? Looks way nicer than any street I've ever lived on. I also feel like the Myers house is not that scary looking, despite the fact that everyone's like, it's the spooky house. I'm like, it's got one busted window. What is like going on here? But that like it's really important, right? That when you watch it, even if you know even if we had already learned all these rules from Scream and like Scary Movie and like parody references, you're still kind of wowed by the movie because it's gorgeous and like really effective in like all of the formal thing that it does. I think that's important.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, like, Matt, with what you were talking about, that one scene, which is maybe one of the most, if not like, it's got to be up there for most iconic images from a horror movie. And like, when the first time you see it, you're like absolutely blown away. You're like, oh, like that's how you use shadows and darkness in your movie to like add to the effect of, you know, whatever spooks or whatever it is that you're going for. Like that's how you use the tools of cinema to tell your story or whatever it is. But also then with what Simon is saying, I think it kind of goes back to what you guys were saying before about how it like builds terror. So there's something about like how beautiful and sleek, especially all of the like exterior shots during the daytime of the town. And for some reason you're like, okay, the suburbs are sick and gorgeous, but also why are they the most terrifying place in the world?
Yeah.
Like it makes you simultaneously love the suburbs and want to live there, but also think this is the worst place to be.
Which that made, I had that thought of, and trying to connect some dots of like culturally what was happening. And we can definitely, if you want me to table this for a little bit down the line,
go for it.
All right.
We're here.
It made me think about what was going on culturally outside of that. And so again, not being an absolute authority on the matter, but like loosely, like what's kicking around in my head, I go, okay, late 70s, what's going on in real life. You have John Wayne Gacy was kind of coming up. I think like his arrest was 78. I tried to look that up around this because like as I was watching it this past week and I saw Michael in the clown costume, that was like one weird connection I made. I'm like, oh, I wonder if they did that because of John Wayne Gacy. Like one of those weird things, like who knows?
Yeah, dude.
So just kind of cross-referencing like real event timelines with what's going on here. And then, so you've got that. So that whole idea of serial killers, suburban, like neighborhoods, the idea that stranger danger, that whole stranger danger PSA vibe was, I feel like starting to ramp up right around this time. Like, do you know where your kids are? Like that sort of thing, where slowly melting away are the days of you can trust your neighbor with anything. And that's what really caught my attention with the scene where Jamie Lee Curtis is getting chased. She's knocking on doors frantically, help me, help me, help me. The lights go on. Someone looks out the window, like, I can't be bothered. So like, that's the terror of like, you are like, it's not like a Friday the 13th where you're in the middle of nowhere in a desolated campsite, or Night of the Living Dead where this supernatural thing just came out and you are you don't know who is going to be where. This is one single killer and you are surrounded by so many suburbanites who should be home. Like, how many adults are in this town? There should be a good,
Yeah, I was very confused. Like, why did all the adults need babysitters on Halloween? That's like the one thing you do, like with your children. That's very like, I don't know what's going on there.
I think this is like a big swinger community. So they were all at some like swinging Halloween party, and they were like, "Whatever, let's let our kids."
If you call the number, I thought about this. This is a stupid aside. This is what my ADHD decided to do, but I'm going to make a joke about it. There's early on, the girls are walking away from the high school. It's the end of the day. and like you can see like, oh, we have to learn 3 new cheers in the morning. I'm just going to be so busy. There's a sign that says like Haddonfield like football tickets on sale now. Call. If you that number is not for Haddonfield football tickets. That's for the swingers community. Okay?
Oh, interesting.
So we
And
need to
anyone
call that
would have
number
known that
to
if they
verify.
watched the movie.
Everyone is now going to rewatch this movie thinking about what kind of soup Michael Myers was eating and whether or not there is a large swinger community within this town. And
It definitely is.
The Haddonfield Hotties.
But I do think that there is something about like that it's sleek looking movie and like all the cultural things that Matt is referencing that also like we think of slashers as an 80s phenomenon, right? Which
Mhm.
is like a time of like renewed American exceptionalism and abundance, right? And this movie like kind of fits in that, right? Because it's the late 70s, it's the tail end of the 70s, but it's a like really leafy, like beautiful suburb. And it kind of fits that vibe of like, okay, yeah, we have all this gorgeous stuff, but like what are your deepest, darkest fears, right? And I think that is crucial. And the other thing is that what I like about this movie that when we talk about the sequels we'll maybe bring up is that you don't really get a sense that Michael Myers is supernatural in this movie, right? Other than like how did he learn how to drive a car? I don't know that. And the spooky moment when he gets up at the end, obviously, but there is no like clear like, oh yeah, he like a demon or something, right? That sometimes we forget. And I think that's like really cool about this movie. You spend your whole time thinking about the terror rather than thinking about like the ramifications of the supernatural, which in something
Yeah.
like Night of the Living Dead is the only thing they're dealing with, right? Is they're like trying to figure out, well, oh my God, all of a sudden the rules of the world are gone. What do we do? I think that's cool.
You're not actually thinking of him as like this unstoppable force yet. He's really just like a bad dude. And like the way
with a
that
knife, that's it.
Loomis talks about him and he's like, this is no human. He is the personification of evil. And everyone's kind of just like, all right, you're being a bit of a drama queen. Maybe tone it down like a couple of notches. But, you know, once we get into the later movies and it is sort of revealed that he is kind of like this demonic, you know, supernatural being or whatever, then all of Loomis's, you know, proclamations about Michael Myers like make a bit more sense. And it's not just, you know, him being overly dramatic about what he thinks that this dude is capable of. But you're right. It's not here in this movie. Yeah.
He's very free. The scene where he's hiding in the bushes and he's like trying to scare the kids away from the Myers. I'm like, dude, this guy should be arrested. Like, what are we doing?
Get your ass away from there.
Yeah,
And he's just casually walking.
The sheriff is standing there. I was like, what is this?
Also, he's just casually walking down the block, and then the police officer's like, "Hey, where were you?" And he goes, "You need to hurry now." And I'm like, "You're just lackadaisically walking around the block like dum-de-dum-de-dum." Like, what the hell is going on with this guy? Yeah, Loomis kind of sucked. Like, also, what licensed psychiatrist is packing a gun? Like, clearly this is...
He flashes that little card.
Well, so this actually is a nice little springboard into just an idea that crossed my mind as I'm watching it too, of the understanding of mental health at large at this time too, right? Like, it's super easy to make mental health, insanity, whatever, like the state hospital, this guy's insane, he's just cracked, he's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's evil. He has there are no rules or reason why, like, he's just decided to kill, whether it was his sister or whether, now again, I understand in the larger metascope here, there are the rules, the last girl, so on and so forth. But from just the myopic view of, it's interesting that they're using this mental health thing of like, yeah, he's just crazy. Like, there's no explanation, he's evil. And not to borrow from our previous episode of the podcast, which you should check out on all your streaming platforms on Night of the Living Dead. But it reminded me of how in Night of the Living Dead, they're like, there's the news scenes about, oh, there was a radioactive meteor that caused this. The public at large doesn't understand radioactivity. Like, the viewing public does not understand the scientific implications of that. So if you're just fed that, and they're like, oh yeah, that's it's pseudoscience. It vaguely, now I know this is a stretch, but it vaguely reminded me of that with oh, he's just a crazy guy, like mental health, like especially like at this time period where state hospitals were just loaded with people who were neurodivergent and but like it's easy to villainize crazy people in this era from, you know, basically the birth of cinema up until, I don't know, like now. Because now we're like, oh no, he's not crazy, he's just misunderstood. Like, but.
Yeah. Well, I think recently I've been watching a lot of movies, especially like spooky movies, through the lens of just like dudes being incels and you know,
I mean, this one, check please.
that just like causing guys to do like the dumbest and most awful things possible. And with this movie, like totally fits into that, right? Like we have all the rules of like, if you are someone in a horror movie and you don't want to be killed, like all you have to do is not have sex. But like, then what does that tell us about the Michael Myers character? Is that he's like so like morally opposed to people having sex that he will go out and murder them. And that's just like, we're just like, okay, yeah, that's your thing, dude. That's like a totally normal, valid thing to do. But if we are thinking about him as like not a supernatural demonic figure, and we are thinking about him as just like a dude, like that is something that literally we are put into his shoes as a child, where that sort of idea is put into his head, where there's probably like a bit of a like some sort of like Oedipal, you know, feelings towards his sister, where he's like, no, I must kill the dude who was sleeping with my sister and also her because I love her. And now like, I don't want anyone to have sex and I'll kill them if they do. So it's probably a stretch, but sorry, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, like Loomis says, he's like he's not been doing anything. He's just been sitting here waiting for this day. Like when I watched it back, I was like, well, what is this? This day is Halloween. Okay, that's when it happened. But like, why this one? And also, I was like, well, he got to be lifting some weights or something. Like he's a big dude. Like what you mean? He's sitting there. He doesn't just.
Pea soup is very nutritious.
Yeah, God. Man's been grinding. Give him some respect, honestly.
He's been hitting some push-ups and squats and pull-ups in the courtyard there or something.
Body fueled by split pea soup. Now we're gonna make this a thing where the newest pre-workout is split pea soup.
Yeah,
guys with shakers.
Shakers of split pea soup. You know what I'm enjoying about this conversation is that we are both hitting on really deep societal issues, like the state of, you know, understanding mental health, what we were seeing in terms of like the boom in the suburbs and things like that, but also really like dumbing it down with the split pea soup conversation.
You gotta have both levels.
It helps level it out because it gets like once. I mean, I'm the type of person that's like, all right, it's getting a little too serious.
Yeah,
let's lighten it up. But like, it's kind of what you said at the beginning of the show is. That's kind of what this show is for. Is so many other like experts have dredged this up, and they have all these professional opinions. We're normal dudes who like we just have middle school sensibilities, but also like we went to film school. Like,
yeah,
like Matt like knows how to light a scene. Like you know how to like light.
That was done. That was done fantastic. Yeah.
Simon literally has a PhD. Like you guys are like are experts, but at our core, we are very much so. Just
middle school kids who want to chuckle jokes.
That's the thing about this movie. If we think about this is the headiest thing I'll say, but if we think about like like the experience of watching a movie and like understanding the meaning of a movie is like in the circumstance you watch it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about Halloween is it works on like all levels, right? Like if you were like, oh, I want to do some Freudian psychoanalysis, right? What's up with the Oedipal angle, right? Well, how are we going to explore that? You could do that and study this movie because it's like a perfectly made movie,
Mm-hmm.
and you could do that. But like also the editing and the pacing of every scene and like the way it creates tension of like, oh, when's he gonna get her
Mm-hmm.
is so fun, right? That like in a group of people having alcoholic beverages and whatnot that you enjoy would be like getting rowdy and having a good time. Like that the movie worked on like those polarizing extremes is like, yeah, that's a type movie, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a really poignant way of like framing it, and that is the sign of something that truly is timeless, or at least has earned the right in the upper echelon of discussion, and
Yeah.
and can be referenced, and is not ripped off, but like is kind of remixed, and it's in reverence too, because it was just so it was done so well.
Yeah.
A little just a quick comment that popped in my head too, just as you mentioned it, of like the editing, the pacing, the shots, the cinematography. And Raph said it, I think, earlier in the show too, of it the what we're seeing is helping tell the story. And that helped a lot, because there were just some dialogue choices that were just so like, I'm like, man, this writing is terrible. Like, but like it wasn't a bad movie. Like
Yeah, I know.
there
Yeah,
were
that's
some
weird.
there were some questionable like dialogue choices, or like maybe also like just a few like Foley issues. Like I don't know why I stuck, like they drop a beer can and you don't hear the beer can hit the floor. I'm like, why didn't I hear the beer can hit the floor? Meanwhile, she's just getting stabbed. I'm like, I didn't hear the beer can. My suspension of disbelief is out the window.
But even some of the scenes, the very like the first scene where Jamie Lee Curtis is in class, she's like talking about like the nature of fate,
Yeah,
like in her high school class. I was like, what high school class is? I was like, what are they learning in this school?
Also, the
Like,
fact that she was able to turn it on while being distracted by
yeah,
the
what the
murderous demonic figure just lurking outside of her window. To me,
maybe she's supernatural.
the first half of the movie or all of the parts where it's like Haddonfield in the daytime, and it's like shot like the shots of him just like lurking like behind a bush or behind the laundry out in the backyard or outside of the school. Like to me, like those are the creepiest moments. It's not so much
Yeah.
when he's like chasing her at the end or like actively killing people and, pinning that dude to the wall with his knife. All of those moments where it's just like him standing
And
in
that's
the distance from like, it's always like it's like typically a wide or like super wide shot of him.
or you get it's like just over his shoulder, like
Yeah.
when he's following what's the little boy's
The
name?
kid
Timmy.
outside, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's that framing too is like really interesting, because they do the Jaws thing where you don't see the monster, they don't reveal the monster until closer to the end. But I definitely agree with you, Raph, of that the most like the longer shots in daylight in a highly populated suburb,
Mhm.
like that's what really brought it in. Of that is very smart storytelling. Of you're able to make someone feel fear in broad daylight and in the surrounded by people. That, like, again,
Yeah.
going back to the previous comment of typically you're afraid of things that go boom in the night and you're in the middle of nowhere. It's easy to feel afraid when you're alone. Them being able to create terror and a sense of fear in a setting that should not induce
Yeah.
fear that was truly masterful.
It's this evil coming into your home, into your backyard, right? Which isn't really, and Simon, you might be able to speak to this a little bit better in terms of just like the history of the genre and like like where it is that people are experiencing horror within horror movies.
Yeah.
But this is like a really unique thing where it's taking the suburbs, which is supposed to be this like super chill, nice, aspirational sort of way of living, and it is bringing evil into it. And you are looking at these scenes and these shots of what is like otherwise beautiful scenery, but then there's just this like one dude lurking, and it ruins everything. You're like, well, now bushes are scary, and like I love bushes, you know, like.
And the scene of him driving the car too. I really, so when I went back to the scene of him driving the car, when he passes them,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh, there's
is
that
it?
great shot of Loomis like looking one way and then he turns and the car passes.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I was like, what was I was like, I thought what was unsettling was like that someone in the car is looking at them, right? But it's such a weird scene. Like it's just a car driving down the street, and you are like, by the way it's framed, you're like, oh fuck, I'm scared, right? Like that's not good. I don't know. That's kind of and I think that is again like why the movie fits more into the '80s, right? Because of its influence. That becomes the setup for a lot of '80s
Mm-hmm.
slashers and other horror movies, are like sort of destabilizing those home places, like whether that like the mall in Shopping Mall, right, or the bedroom in, Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Like all of these sorts of things, as opposed to something like an earlier Texas Chainsaw or Night of the Living Dead, where it's like the horrible place that is out there, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you've gone to, and that something has happened that leads you to be there.
Yeah, it's bringing all of that into what should be like sanctuaries.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes sense then, like, why it's like almost like more pertinent to our cultural desires, right? Because they're happening like kind of in and around the home, right? So they're all
Mm-hmm.
about all of those things, I think.
Do you guys want to talk about Final Girls, or do you want to talk about, because I feel like the POV shot at the beginning is also super interesting by like literally putting the viewer into the shoes of the slasher.
Let's talk about the POV. I like the POV.
Okay.
I want to
I'm
explore it
game
a
for
little more.
POV if that's what Matt wants to do.
Yeah.
Some split POV, quite literally.
Before we talk about the POV, I think the internet has made us dumb in many, many ways, but I think the best example of that is the misuse of POV on social media.
Yeah.
If you're showing someone reacting to something, that's not a POV.
That's just a reaction.
That's just a reaction. What we get in Halloween is a POV.
We are looking through their eyes. His literal mask eye holes.
Yeah.
Eye holes. I definitely agree that, but like, I think again, trying again, not being like the authority on film history, but it was such a great use of POV and such a one, like it's a very clever way of getting a lot of scenes handled in one fell swoop, where you don't have to reset cameras. You can just go, okay, we're going to follow this action, go through here, and boom, we're good. And also just that perspective of, that's literally how the movie starts out, is you are in the shoes of the killer, but you don't know why. Like, if you went into Halloween, then it was also a little unsettling to then be out of POV and then you just see the tiny boy. Like, that was very unsettling. Of like, that's how young this character was supposed to be, and how vicious he was. So like right off the bat, that said it, because when you're in the POV, you don't realize how small he is. Like, I guess you don't realize that he's supposed to be, I don't know how old he's supposed to be, but he was a smaller kid.
Mm-hmm.
You just get this sense of like impending, like very voyeuristic, a predator vibe. He's on the hunt. And like hiding in the shadows as the boyfriend comes down the stairs. So for that to be the flip, I think that reveal was very interesting because then you're like, oh, this is a really little kid. Flash forward. Now, all the rest of the uses of POV, they didn't really do much POV point of view from Michael that I recall later on in the film, but they did do it with Jamie Lee Curtis as she was navigating the upstairs floor, and I thought that was an interesting choice because, hence why I say split POV. To lean into our joke, but also, thank you. But it caught me like, oh, this is an interesting thing. So like, not to overthink it, but I'm like, oh, are they intellectual equals? Are they? Yeah.
Are we drawing some sort of connection between these two characters and that they're the only ones who have the POV, or is it just like a cool filmmaking trick?
Yeah, and that's probably what it is. Of like to build every other thing that we've discussed, like cinematography wise, in terms of framing or using point of view, it builds tension. And
it also, I don't want to interrupt.
No, you go.
I was gonna say it builds tension, but like in a way where and this connects also to the fact that he's like not explicitly supernatural in this movie. Like it makes you use your imagination, right? So like at the beginning, you don't understand that it's a kid until the twist, right? Just like the way like a lot of it takes place in the daytime. That's like 40 minutes of the movie, right? There's a lot of just like, what am I afraid of here? Like, it's some dude in a mask, right? Like a lot of movies that like the building the tension that way, it doesn't have to do a lot, right? It can do it in a kind of minimalistic way to get you to be way more afraid as a viewer than a movie that's going to go like really heavy handed.
And that's what made it, I totally agree. And that's what made the payoff of the reveal of the 3 dead teenagers. It was boom, boom, boom. You're like, oh God, they're all dead. Like, yeah, you saw what was her? Annie? Was she the one that was strangled in the car?
Yeah.
Like, you saw her in her dead, lifeless body as he was bringing it. But like for Lori?
Yeah.
For Lori to then have that revealed of boom, 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 3 dead bodies, and like the tombstone, like that is where, for me, that's where all the tension paid off. Of like, here's all 3 of these things, and also this is a little bit of an ad hoc to Simon's point. What I really liked is that it wasn't all gore, because he lifts the Billy is his name or whatever, Paul. Dude, I suck at names.
The boyfriend, who knows? Yeah, right? Like,
it's definitely not Paul.
The bespectacled bloke, he lifts him up and then just stabs him into the wall. You hardly see, there isn't any blood dripping off his, I was like, oh, is there blood going to drip off his toes? Or like, is his eyeballs going to pop out? Like, no, like dude just got manhandled into a wall. He was turned into a stud. Just boom. That's where I'm going to hang this poster now.
That is probably the gnarliest kill. There was, so with the building of the tension, right? So after we see all those bodies, so when that happens, there's like 15, 20 minutes left in the movie after she sees that. And I'm pretty sure that's like also the moment where we get that super iconic shot of Michael, coming out of the darkness in the closet.
Yeah.
And it's criminal that we've been talking about this movie for so long and have not mentioned the score. But the score starts to kick into gear, and it's like that like faster paced sort of piano. And from there, you're just like, oh my God, like your heart's racing. It's like a very, very exciting movie. And all of this, like, not slow building, but this tension building that has sort of happened throughout the movie is now all just like exploding into your face.
Which, again, now that I'm glad that you brought that up, because I thought about this as well. There's hardly any other music in the film outside of Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah.
Phenomenal choice. So like if you're talking about, narrative wise, like, oh, Don't Fear the Reaper, don't be afraid. But like also like it sets the time period. So I'm like, oh, we're in the late 70s.
Yeah.
But like the fact that like, okay, one, let's dissect this in layers. One, they're broke. They don't have that much of a budget to be blowing on music licensing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just so happen to know one of the dudes on Blue Oyster Cult. Two, it's another one of those devices that helped, at least for me, build the tension where it was just the score or the little piano riff in moments, and like personally it mimics heart racing, and then like so you hear that gets your heart racing. I don't know if there's any. I'd be hard pressed to say like if there are any other like original score pieces or like I'll say riffs more or less just for ease. Like there's that and there's Jaws. Now let's discuss if you're like, oh no, you know what, Forrest Gump had this one, but like that's also like just another one of those very very iconic uniqueness, if that's even a word. It's an iconic piece of the tension building, and it all kind of culminates together. But like it's a unique characteristic about this film that like between the mask and the music, John Carpenter's Halloween.
Yeah, and it's like it's right from the beginning, right? When the score kicks in,
and with the opening
that
credits, right?
yeah, that it like kind of sets the tone of the movie. And I have heard Carpenter say that he kind of wanted to riff on The Exorcist, that he like liked the music from The Exorcist, and so it's like a synthy, upbeat Exorcist, which is also interesting because that also is like kind of a prestigious and like very Hollywood horror movie. But it's very different sound, right? Like I think if you like looked at the musical notes, maybe you could get a sense that they sound the same, but it's not. It doesn't to the viewer come across the same at all, which I think is interesting, right? It's way more fun and like blood pumping, I think, like as Raph said.
Yeah. Is it just piano? Is it just keys? Is there any?
That's it.
Yeah, I think if I remember, it's just keys.
It's insane.
I think there is some orchestral stuff. I will throw in the trivia moment here, which is that I think John Carpenter's dad was a music professor at Bowling Green.
Nice.
And I think they performed the score. So I think that there's some little bit of orchestral stuff in there, but it's mostly synthesized because that's like what Carpenter worked on.
Now, was he a doctor?
Yeah, I guess he would have been. I don't know. John Carpenter or his dad?
No, his dad.
I think he would have been because he was a college professor. Yeah.
I mean, at Bowling Green,
the Fighting Hens.
At Bowling Green.
I don't think that's their mascot at all.
And
the Fighting Hens.
The Bowling Green Fighting Hens.
Matt was right when he said that Haddonfield is a town in New Jersey. But they filmed it in Pasadena, but they ripped the street name from Bowling Green because that was where Carpenter was from. So he was like, "Oh, let's just like throw that in there." So that's the more film trivia coming at you.
Interesting. Wow. It is funny that like the suburbs in this movie are like of all of those places, but then it takes place in what is it, Illinois or Indiana?
Yeah, Illinois.
So, but it's like it's perfect because right, like the suburbs are kind of the same everywhere across the country.
Middle America, yeah.
So
like the only thing that like would give it, I think I saw maybe once a palm tree, like it, and I'm like, oh, it's a little weird, but like maybe it's just a really rich corn baron. But like that's the other thing, like just my quick riff on like the Midwest, right? Like I find it fascinating that the scariest films succeed in middle America as the setting because it is just, it's plain, or like there's even like, yes, I know it's an homage. The fact that Stranger Things is set in Indiana, like but like that's the thing of like that expectation of what could possibly go wrong in the middle of America where nothing happens. Where it's like, no, like shit happens all the time in New York City, or like there's gang wars in LA. Like, okay, that's real life scary. Let's dial it up a bit. Everything's, pretty even keel out in middle America. Let's just toss a psycho who's jacked up on split pea soup and squats and see what happens.
And courtyard squats. Okay, so we spoke about the POV, and it took us back to the suburbs. So I don't know if we need to spend too much more time on the suburbs. We also got there by way of the score, which,
Yeah.
Amazing. So like this score for me, like I feel like I've said it so many times on the show, but like, okay, Jaws, like, yes, that is one that we immediately all know. Like you hear those few notes and you're like, stay away from the ocean. Star Wars, we obviously all know like the Imperial March and all that stuff. Rocky, you hear that and you immediately want to run a race or do some sort of athletic competition. You hear this and you immediately, like the holiday of Halloween, like October, the month of October, like immediately fills my head and heart.
You can smell the foliage, the crisp autumnal air, and like just that weird earthiness about it. But like as we were talking about, it's soup season. I mean, that's really what the song is saying. Sorry,
it's all about that.
I didn't mean to go off onto that bit. But like that crisp, like autumnal air, especially like in the Northeast where we're from.
Mm-hmm.
And then like it makes you think of that spooky, like you're like, oh, it's just a quiet, dimly lit like suburban street, and it hits you. Like if you hear that, you're like, oh shit, who's following me? Like I gotta get home.
And there's so many. So there's like that piece of the score, the like main sort of like reprise or whatever. That's like super iconic. But then there's that weird, like when they're building the tension throughout, he always goes to those like three notes where it's like, dun dun. Dun,
yeah.
That, and like to me, that's like I'm so tone deaf, so that probably sounded awful. But you guys know what I'm talking about. To me, that's that's like the scariest part of the score. And then at the end, when it's like kicking into like just like a chase scene, he really ramps it up. So it is interesting how it like sort of like starts off kind of fast with that opening intro that we all know, and then sort of slows down throughout the movie and then picks back up. Okay, so Final Girls. Yeah, so this establishes all of the rules for the final girl. What do you guys make of Jamie Lee Curtis as said final girl?
I'm going to go first because I feel like Simon's going to better articulate. I mean, as a casual observer, right? Like even without knowing the rules or having been aware of this, this narrative kind of setup for slashers that kind of follow it very clearly, right? They establish he's got some, Michael Myers has some sort of vendetta against premarital sex, or I took it as, well, it's his sister who's supposed to be watching him. He's looking for a maternal figure to like take care of him because he's a child. But that's a little more nuanced than I think need be. So looking at the rest of the gang, I also picked up like, all right, well, he also killed a guy. They were drunk driving. The other Annie was smoking a doobie while driving. They're committing crimes. So like maybe in a weird, strange way, and definitely correct me because I don't know anything past this installment of the series, but like there's a case to be made that Michael Myers is an anti-hero trying to clean the streets of debaucherous teens, not just having premarital sex, but like they're a danger to society because now, granted, there's some flaw in that because I know Jamie Lee Curtis was smoking a doobie in the Chevy listening to Blue Oyster Cult, but she was
As
just
one
like,
does.
as one does, like puff puff pass, baby. I need more cowbell. I'm gonna ask the doctor for more cowbell. So
I got a fever.
I got a fever, and the doctor's got to prescribe me more cowbell. So, but back to overall, like that idea of Jamie Lee Curtis being the final girl. It smacks you in the face of how maternal she is. Oh, I don't want. I'm embarrassed by the boy. I don't have anyone to. Oh, I have to babysit. She's knitting, for Christ's sakes. Like, she's a grandmother, so she exudes like responsibility, and so like in my mind, watching it for the first time, not knowing if she was going to survive or not, part of me was like, I think this one survives because one of these things isn't like the other. You know, like, she had the responsibility. She wasn't like these floozy girls. She like took care of the kids, told them to get the hell out of the house. She was yelling, screaming, knocking on doors, trying to get someone to help her. And it just so happened that Dr. Loomis was at the right place at the right time, which is upsetting because like she did everything she could to take care of this guy as a teenager, wielding.
Yeah.
Now, I think it was a terrible mistake for her to take the knife and then just throw it next to him, because like dude got up, and then you do it again and you toss it right next to him. Like, no, I'm holding on to that knife like the entire time, like self-defense wise. Like, guy comes after me, why are you throwing it?
She had hangers and stuff, and the knitting needle.
And the knitting needle.
I think it was a big mistake for her to leave the knife, but she exuded kind of this motherly quality throughout, which is kind of what, upon my first viewing, gave me the sense that she might make it through this, but I don't know how.
Yeah. And I think that is interesting that like as the original final girl, and she's not, right? Like, but she is to us, right? Because we think of this as, but like Texas Chainsaw also ends with the final girl, right? That's 4 years before this, right? And we could think of other movies that do similar things, but that would be like the most prominent, right? I think it's interesting, like how then, like over the '80s, that shift, right, to like sort of change that perception. But also, what's interesting is that she is so motherly in this, and she is so like, oh, I'm so afraid of all these things, right? And like, don't even tell the guy that I like him, and the kids can't do anything but like sit with me and watch the movie and do the jack. But like, also, Jamie Lee Curtis was totally a babe, and like even at the time, that was part of her public image, was that like she kind of was like hot, and it was kind of like a sort of second wave like sex positive feminism, which then makes it interesting that she's so famous for a character that like acts and is dressed like the grandmother of the three girls, right?
Yeah.
It's like very intentional, and like again, that's like why the movie is so effective, is that it like doing all of those things so deliberately, in a way that like makes it legible to you, even if you like were contemporary at the time and knew that Jamie Lee Curtis was hot, right? That you'd still be like, oh, like she's the grandmother of these friends, even though that doesn't really make any sense.
But now she is the grandmother, forcing us all to buy Activia, so that way we have regular bowel movements.
Yeah, she's a hot grandma now.
She's fully embraced the hot grandma.
I like that you can't even get that out without a laugh.
No.
Of the friends, right, who get murdered, just a random note, PJ Souls, who plays, what is it? She plays Linda in this, or Annie? One of the friends. She's also one of the mean girls in Carrie. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was killing it in 70s horror flicks. Good for her. Also kind of a babe.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
Like,
while we're here. While we're here, kind of a babe.
While we're here, yeah. This is the
No.
this is the part of the episode where Raph just reveals that he's a horny creep.
Hey, at least you're not. What's his name? Paul. That the line about like, oh, and then we rip Lindsay's clothes off, and I'm like, wait, is Lindsay the little girl? What the fuck?
No, that was so weird.
Like,
dude.
such
That's
a
the weirdest
pedophilic-
line in the movie.
I'm like, okay, I get like, haha, like you're drunk, but like, that's really fucked up. Like,
oh, so maybe
what?
Michael Myers was doing some sort of service.
Yeah,
There is a
that was like a real casual joke about pedophilia that I was like, whoa, what
I get-
did
Yeah,
happen?
it was way too casual.
The
Like,
only person who doesn't do anything that we could like see as like being like morally something that we would be morally opposed to is the random mechanic who he kills to get the clothes for, unless there's some backstory where that mechanic also had some
Dude's got a
pedophilic
bunch of
tendencies, yeah,
pedo porn. He's
or
got
something.
a ton of pedo porn.
And I guess the nurse. But if you're saying that the nurse is like part of the system that
No, she wasn't killed, was she?
I think
No, she's not.
she's not.
But he just leaves her there.
Yeah.
It's such a weird
Loomis-
opening. He's like, because
Yeah,
Michael
with
Myers
Dr. Loomis.
grabs her out of the car and then
Yeah, why
like,
was
attacks
she
her,
rolling down the
and then
window?
steals the car, and then Loomis is like, "I'll take care of it." He just like runs off. I was like, "It's the middle of the night." I was like, "What? You're gonna leave this poor woman here?"
Yeah, I mean, I
What's
think
going on?
I think the big takeaway that we're getting from this conversation is that Loomis is kind of useless,
Oh, absolutely.
and I've always
Yeah,
loved him as a
He was
character.
he was almost like a what's the Deus Ex, not Deus Ex Machina. What am I thinking? It's
Well, he is at the end, kind of a dick.
yeah, like
to me, yeah.
like just so happens to be there. Like he didn't shed or make life any easier for anyone. He just kind of strummed about this town, told one cop, and then just had a gun. And that's why he's the hero.
And I think it's interesting because I know we mentioned it with the POV shots. So like, okay, like who are the parallels here, right? Is it Laurie and Michael? Which I think other iteration of the franchise do that. Particularly the Rob Zombie ones. But I kind of think in this movie that the parallels are Dr. Loomis and Michael, because you get neither of their backstories, right? Like, we don't know anything about Loomis. He's seemingly a psychiatrist. He's like only focused on one patient, right? He's like a singular focus on like keeping his evil at bay. And Michael Myers has a singular focus on like bringing that evil to Haddonfield. And I think that is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, they're both kind of psychos. Like Loomis is in a way
definitely
a psycho in his own right.
That's what the opening of the movie. He's like, we need to protect it, or we need to make sure it doesn't get out. And the woman's like, you're really gonna call him it? Like that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, how can you be so singularly focused on one thing and so bad at it?
Oh, god awful. Dude was terrible.
Like if you devote your life to just doing one thing and you just fail at every turn at doing said thing, like maybe choose a new career path, Loomis.
It doesn't matter when you have a gun, because at the end of the day, you could be terrible at your job, but you got a gun and you solve that problem with that gun.
A good guy with a gun. That's what.
Good guy. Yep.
That's
all this movie is perpetuating, is good guy with a gun.
This movie is teaching us that we need good guys with guns and that we need to punish all sinners, whether
mentally ill people.
Whether their sinning is premarital sex, smoking doobies, listening to rock and roll music, underage drinking and driving, or casually making jokes about ripping off the clothes of an 8-year-old.
Yeah, that one makes sense. Maybe
Yeah.
That guy had it coming. The other three, I feel kind of bad about. You know, his sister kind of feel bad about. Annie and the other broad feel kind of bad. Paul, no, screw that guy.
Screw that
Had
guy.
it coming.
Yeah,
he was drunk driving, then made a pedophilia joke. Done. Write him off.
Yeah,
you make the list.
Yeah.
But so then the movie's like flattening all of those sins. It's like, yes, premarital sex is just as bad as making
Keep
jokes.
making, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. We've really covered it all. Do you guys have anything else on this movie specifically before? I feel like we should save some time to talk about the remakes, the sequels, the reboots, and
Yeah, I
all
have
that
stuff
stuff.
about the sequels and reboot, but nothing else on the movie, really.
All I wanted to add was I thought it was neat because as dumb as I am, it didn't hit me of like watching the kids watch the RKO production of The Thing.
Yeah,
That I'm like,
dude,
oh wait,
classic.
what? And then when I kind of cross reference, I'm like, oh, he did The Thing after this, which is funny. Like this is him teasing, like, oh, I like The Thing. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that's cool.
That was cool. That was a nice little, I guess we can call it an Easter egg now.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
almost
I think it's an Easter
foreshadowing.
egg.
Yeah, Easter egg, whatever.
They
Something.
watched that, and they watched Forbidden Planet. Is the other? There's like a little clip. That's the one in color a little later on.
Yeah.
But they should have shown more of The Thing from Another World, 'cause that movie's flat.
I need to watch that. But John Carpenter's Thing in the Canon. Really good episode about
Yeah.
that, if anyone's interested. Okay, before we do like recommendations and stuff, because this movie did launch a massively successful franchise with spin-offs and reboots and sequels and all that good stuff. Simon, we know you have thoughts. Let's hear them.
I have thoughts. My first thought is that I have to say, like, most of the direct Halloween sequels, I do not really like. Because again, like, I feel like a lot of my pleasure in this movie is the, like, as the kid says, right, like him as the boogeyman, right? Like, rather than him as any, like, coherent, supernatural or otherwise type figure, right? Like, Michael Myers is not that interesting. Right? Like, it's not about Michael Myers. Right? It's about the fear of Michael Myers. And those are different things. And so I think with every movie that you make, that gets a little less. I do want, because of, I was born in 1993. So because of my age, the Rob Zombie movies came out when I was like into horror movies and I really like them. And I feel like the aesthetic of those movies is just like awesome. And like everything I like about horror movies. Are they great movies? I don't know. That's a question for someone else, maybe. I think they're really fun. I think the end of the second one is really strange, and I don't know what's happening there. A lot of supernatural stuff, but they're fun, and I think they succeed in being fun Halloween movies. But what's interesting is that originally, so Compass and Mustafa Akkad, who's the guy who like funded most of the movie, they kind of originally were like, well, we'll just make Halloween movies, and they can be about anything. And so what's really fun is that Halloween 3 is completely disconnected from Michael Myers, and that movie is amazing, and everyone should watch it. Demented Halloween mask, Tom Atkins with a beautiful, gigantic 80s mustache.
I've heard that
A
one's
little
like
bit
pretty
of
spooky. Like,
It's pretty spooky. I also feel like it's a little bit racist against the Irish. They had some moments there that I'm kind of questioning.
Oh, the Irish.
It's kind of weird in that way.
if it
And
were the
it's like
Scots, I'd be fine with, but
If
don't
it was
come.
the Dutch, I think the Dutch.
Yeah, or the French.
yeah, but
Maybe English people too.
Irish.
Most Europeans are fair game, I think, except for the Irish. Don't fuck
Yeah.
with
Leave
the
them.
Irish.
They've already dealt with enough shit.
With the Irish, and they were colonized too, so that's not cool to make fun of the Irish, right? But that movie is awesome and like totally has a cliffhanger ending and clearly did horribly. And then in Halloween 4, they were just like, yeah, forget that. Just go back to Michael Myers. Like, forget that ever happened. But that movie is so much fun and more people should watch Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which has no witch and no Michael Myers. So,
And no
awesome
season.
movie. And no season.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people rave about that movie, and talk about it in the context that the original plan was just like these will just be like anthology movies, and it'll be about different things that happen on Halloween. So I got to check that one out. But I have also
Yeah,
heard
and
that
it
it's
has
like legit
some
scary.
gnarly kills, some creepy bug stuff, kids with their faces getting eaten off, all sorts of awesome things in that movie that you don't necessarily get in Halloween 1. So,
Kids with their faces eaten off. A bunch of
yeah.
awesome stuff.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I haven't seen any of the Bloomhouse ones that just came out. So, like, Halloween and then the Halloween
Halloween
Kills
Kills
and Halloween
ends.
Ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen those. Um,
What about
but
H2O?
I haven't seen H2O.
Is H2O the one with Busta Rhymes?
Oh, I don't know. I just saw after I rewatched it recently. It was recommended. They're like Halloween 20 years after, so it was like set in 1998.
I think that's the one with
Yeah.
Busta Rhymes.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
one where they like make a reality show at the Myers house to like have kids like stay, like young people stay there, and I guess they like try to mess with them, but then it ends up that Michael Myers comes back. But I think Busta Rhymes is one of the producers of the show, and he's not one of the kids
Oh my God.
or what young people who is like a
That's
Is
like
it
contestant.
Busta
Halloween
Rhymes?
trying to be
Busta Rhymes as
extreme,
Busta
right?
Rhymes, or
No,
is it
Busta Rhymes just as a TV producer.
Oh, I thought that would be really funny if he played himself as a TV producer.
Nope, just playing a random TV producer.
Hit the guy.
Yeah, a really normal, chill role for Busta Rhymes
Hello,
to take.
Mr. Rhymes.
Yeah, and I've never seen those movies, but I think the Rob Zombie movies go too far into making him like a supernatural phenomenon. Because I think somehow, and I think this is true across like literature and film, not to get on my soapbox, but I think that the fear is the point, and like that is the fun, right? Whether you're reading like a thriller or a horror novel, or you're watching a horror movie, like it's about that anxiety. And as soon as it becomes, oh, it's a real person who's trying to kill you, or it is someone who cannot be stopped, it becomes like a very different type of fear in a way that it, I think it's fine, but like it's less interesting, right? And I think that's where the first one like really nails it. In a way, the sequels, as fun as the Rob Zombie ones are, they kind of go away from that. And I heard that Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends really lean into the supernatural element
Yeah,
a bit.
I think I've only seen the first one of the Blumhouse ones, but I remember that they
Yeah.
very much so rely on the okay, we killed him, but he's actually not dead. A little
Right.
too much, and I also wasn't thrilled with how much of it hinges on his sort of connection to the Laurie character.
Yeah.
Because then it like you're sort of like removing the fear for the rest of us if it really is just this vendetta about one person and you're making just like a story about these two characters, a la like Tom and Jerry or like the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote or something, as opposed to
I was gonna say like Alien, Alien and Sigourney Weaver,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess
No, but it feels more cartoonish to you. That's why you're going with Tom and Jerry.
With Tom and Jerry, yeah, because it's just like, okay, we're just gonna watch the two of them like do this song and dance over and over again, and it's not really about like the fears that we have as society of like this great evil coming into our nice suburban homes and ruining that peace that we have. So like then it's like not scary. It's just watching two characters go back and forth, but one of them can't be killed. So that sort of like loses, to me, it like lost all of the fun and juice of what makes the first one so interesting.
And you even see in the very last, I always forget this, and I've seen the movie probably a dozen times now, but like I always forget that after Loomis shoots him, you see his face in the first one,
Yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
Like he's
He
just
puts
like
the
dude, and he like kind of looked childlike in that shot, and I think that makes it scarier, right? That like this is maybe just a guy with a knife, and maybe he's become a supernatural being, but maybe he hasn't. Is like way freakier of an idea think it's like, oh, he's like an evil being that cannot be stopped. It's like, well, that's just like kind of hopeless, right? Like then it becomes more like zombie type deal, right? It's a little different, and I think that I don't know. I just like that a lot.
Yeah, the idea that it could be anyone. What is causing your fear is your neighbor who is
Yeah,
just unhinged. It's a regular person who just is unhinged. That is more terrifying than like. Yeah, I agree with the sentiment of like, oh, it's an evil entity. Like, nah, I'm screwed. All right, I'm done. Like, but like the fear of like it could be someone, and I think like that preys on similar sentiments about like kind of what I was talking about earlier of like that stranger danger vibe
Mhm.
and like the serial
yeah,
killer ramp up of this era. It's rooted in realism, which is what makes that tension, that fear so much more palpable versus like, man, I'm scared of demons and stuff, but like chances are I'm not gonna have to deal with them. Chances are I'm gonna have to deal with an unhinged neighbor at some point. Hopefully not as bad as that.
and this is the last like heady thing. But if we think about like um right, this fear being real, right? And often we think of these movies as like, in terms of social norms, like pretty conservative, right? And that like the women who are having premarital sex are dying, and the one that's not is the one who lives. But also, if you think about it as it's like the fear that like women in society like have, right? Like about like the way society is like natural, like not naturally, but has been like socialized to like normalize violence toward them. It also makes that more effective, right? So it also lets you like read the film from a feminist perspective in a way that you wouldn't think you could, but I think it's open to it for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really easy to lose all of that stuff, all of these other sort of like layers that we're talking about with this movie in particular, when you
Yeah.
just like ramp up the sort of supernatural element of it, which is an interesting thing that you get when you like have a movie that is as successful as this, and it spawns all of these reboots and um, sequels and all that stuff, and they just sort of like kind of like lose the juice of what made the original so special, and
Yeah.
like why it resonated with so many different people for so many various different reasons. um but yeah, wow, Halloween, we did it, guys, I think.
I think we did. I feel like we kind of hit all of the main points
Yeah.
of that film. I mean,
Yeah, we even hit some of the minor points and points that are non-existent that we just made up.
and that's pretty
I don't know
impressive
if I
because
would be
people have
making
written
minor
about this
jokes.
movie to death.
Oh, it got lost. Never mind. Cut that out. Just cut it. I was making a stretch minor joke about Paul's pedophilia.
So we covered it. Let's do some recommendations before we get out of here for good old John Carpenter's Halloween. So Matt, Simon, you guys know the rules. I believe most of our listeners know the rules, but just in case there's anyone new out there who doesn't know what we do, for each movie that we introduce into the canon, we also recommend 3 other things to check out. If you like said movie, of those 3 things, at least one of them has to be another movie. The other 2, however, can be any and everything else. It could be more movies. It could be a book. It could be a TV show. It could be a band. It can be a video game, comic book. It can be a type of soup. Really, anything. The connections can be as loose or on the nose as we like. We like to get really fun and creative with these recommendations. So, what do you say? Let's have a time. We'll each go. We'll give one recommendation. Give some reasoning for why you're recommending it. Let us know what the connection is, and then pass it on to the next person. So I think for the order.
Wait, can I don't want to throw off the whole vibe here. And you
Uh-oh.
can cut this. This is an editorial thing. You are the host of this show. So I want you to be able to make this decision. What if we give our 3 recommendations and then bend the rules, and because we talked about soup so much, give us one soup recommendation.
Honestly, I love it. Let's do. Well,
I don't want to mess with
You
you.
want to do 1-1-1 and then a soup, or
So
what?
let's
Like,
do-
Because I know it's 3, and like the 4th is a soup.
let's all do our 3, and then we'll do a soup. And then I feel like since this episode is coming out the day before Halloween, we should also do one Halloween candy each, or like say our favorite Halloween candies.
Yeah.
So
okay.
let's do that. And for the order, so you can give soup and candy together. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, our regular recommendations, right? In that
Yeah, we're
order.
doing round robin
Okay.
for that, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
and then we'll
okay, yep.
and then we'll do soup and candy together. So I think for the order,
and candy.
we're gonna go Matt, Simon, Raph. So Matt,
Okay.
first regular recommendation.
I love this. All right. My first regular recommendation, I don't know if like a lot of people have seen this, but I am hoping that the 3rd season, I think they're working on a 3rd season. The Netflix series Mindhunter. Absolutely phenomenal. Don't know if you guys have seen it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It basically, if you're unfamiliar, it kind of is a dramatic bio series about how the CIA develops their basically how they can track down serial killers and profile them. Really fantastic stuff in terms of like just it's rooted a lot in history. They do take some creative liberties, but it is gripping. It's fantastic. And all of the heavy hitters are kind of touched upon, whether it's John Wayne Gacy or
Bundy.
Ed Kemper. Yeah, Ted Bundy.
I like that you call them heavy hitters. Like they're
Well, I mean,
like this is
yeah,
like the
like they're
1927
boxers, yeah.
like
New York Yankees.
Yeah.
Yeah, like talk about murderers row, am I right? Yeah, up the bat, Ed Kemper, he likes to wear ladies' stockings. Like, I don't know. Anyway, Mindhunter, highly recommend it. It's a great watch. It's spooky too, so like it hits that if you really like that rooted in realism fear that you get from Halloween, you definitely get that from Mindhunter and all the tension and the tense moments that it provides.
Awesome. I love that. I think that was recommended for we did Silence of the Lambs like last year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But I like that. I like that recommendation. Okay. Good pick. Sweet.
That's a good one. That was a good show. I love that show.
I never watched, but I think now I will have to.
Now you got a double rec. You got
Yeah.
Okay. So it's my turn? All right. So my first recommendation, I'm going to go a little off the beaten path, and then I'm going to bring it back to movies. So I'm going to go away, and then I'm going to come back.
Nice.
But my first one is going to be a British synthwave band by the name of Gunship.
Oh, yeah.
Gunship. And their self-titled album came out in 2015. And it's a banger, and it includes a song called Tech Noir that John Carpenter does kind of like a little voiceover for. It's really heavy, like sort of John Carpenter worship, but they also sing really well. And I've dabbled in some synthwave, and sometimes the vocals are not very good, and Gunship vocals are very good and really catchy, fun songs. So that would be my recommendation. If you like that feeling, that blood pumping feeling at the end of Halloween, you should just put this album on and just go about your daily life, because I think that will do it for you.
Sweet. I really like that. I do like synthwave, but I feel like I mostly listen to synthwave that doesn't have lyrics.
Yeah, I know, and this band has some lyrics, and I think that has drawn me to them more than other bands that I think I enjoy when I hear and that I listen to in the background. But I think sometimes when I sit down and think and like just listen to it on its own, I get a little bored. And I think Gunship, I don't get bored. I really feel like I dig it. So and they've got more albums, but that first one in 2015 is really good. So
sweet. I love that. That's awesome. Great first recommendations. Okay, I'm gonna be recommending stuff that will sound like kind of insane, and I'm gonna take us on some like weird paths of
let's go.
connecting. them back to Halloween. And the first one, I think I just want to say what it is first, and then I'll take you guys through sort of my thinking of how I got there. So I'm not typically a big reality TV show guy, but there is one show that really does it for me. I'm a big fan of Below Deck. You know, people working on
I have
yachts.
no idea what that is.
And
I've heard of it. Yeah.
They're all, interesting, and they sleep together and have work drama and, social drama. And then also you get like crazy guests who are, chartering the boats and like staying on for a while. So it's really, to me, it's like the best of the best of like what reality TV can be. So I'm recommending the first 10 seasons of that. You really can't
10 seasons?
You really can't go wrong with any of the seasons. You don't need to watch, like, in order to watch season 8, you don't have to have seen seasons 1 through 7. Like, you can just watch season 8 on its own. Yeah. But there are some returning characters. So like if you have the background of like what they've done on previous seasons, it will make the viewing experience a little bit better. But there's, you can just pick up a random season and watch, and it's great. The connection between this, I don't want to say trash, but this reality TV show and Halloween, the little girl who plays, I think Linda is her name, or Lisa? Lindsay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one who's being babysat.
Yeah. So the girl who plays her grew up to be a cast member of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, which is also on which is also on Bravo, which is the same network that airs Below Deck.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done.
I mean, that's why you come to this for the recommendation, right? Because no one else would have gone there, right?
Well, see, figure like Raph has to do this on a weekly basis. So like you go through so many recommendations, you're like, see, like I feel like an idiot for already recommending something that's already been recommended.
There are only so many times that I can re-recommend Home Alone,
Yeah.
So I just got to start thinking real weird with it.
No, I dig that though. I like how you brought it into, like, it does have a connection.
Yeah.
It is connected.
It's totally connected. Yeah. Who doesn't want to watch a slasher movie and then some reality TV?
Just wash it out. Yeah. It's a palate cleanser.
Exactly. All right. Matt, what's your second recommendation?
My second recommendation is there was this great animated show. I'm not going to call it a kid show, and that's what every adult who watches cartoons says. There's this great show that was on Disney XD and Disney called Gravity Falls, and it was it ran for, technically I think they only list 2 seasons, but it felt like 3/4 in terms of longevity. So it was right around when we were in college. So like 2012, 13, I think is when it kind of kicked off, wrapped up around 2015, 16. It is phenomenal because it takes kind of a lot of whimsical, it's a whimsical kind of look at like the paranormal and like the strange town. So there's a lot of, definitely a huge homage to Twin Peaks, but also just horror, terror in general, other sci-fi stuff too, that they lean on, because that's kind of the makeup of the world, as they're constantly investigating the paranormal. But specifically why I view it, I recommend that and tie it back to Halloween and John Carpenter, is that there are 2 episodes that are almost feel like directly homages to John Carpenter's work. One being Summerween. It's basically just Halloween in August, and they make jack-o'-lanterns out of watermelons. It doesn't have like a Michael Myers character to it, but a lot of the spooky kind of vibe and some of the tropes and like little Easter eggs here and there in that episode specifically. And then they also did an episode called, I believe, The Shapeshifter, which is a complete homage to The Thing, and it's phenomenal. So the series as a whole is great, but I tie it back to those two little pieces of work that were tips of the cap to John Carpenter. So Gravity Falls.
Hell yeah. I love it.
Damn. That was a good one. Gravity Falls is an awesome show. I wish I had picked that. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go super nerdy with this one. I
Yes.
feel like I have to do a nerdy one. But I want to recommend a book. Raph maybe knows where I'm going with this. I don't know. But I want to recommend the iconic sort of horror film studies and gender book, which is Men, Women, and Chainsaw: Gender in the Modern Horror Film by Carol Clover. And this is not, I want to say this is not a book I actually really like that much. It came out in the 90s. It's like kind of classic psychoanalytic film theory, and I don't really enjoy that. But it talked a lot about slashers. It talked a lot about Halloween. But what I like about it is it's like a very creative reading in the film, and I think that sometimes like that is just fun to like remember that films are things that are open to like other ideas and new interpretations, and you can just be inspired or hate someone else's idea about a movie. And this is kind of like an iconic book, I would say. So if you're like a movie nerd, in particular a horror film nerd, this is a good one to read. That's my nerdy recommendation.
Is that the book where the phrase "final girl" was originally coined?
I don't know if it was originally coined there. She does a lot of work with the final girl.
Mm-hmm.
And her reading of Halloween, which I will mess up, but it's like very strange in that it's like a feminist reading of the film, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like sort of an understanding of like not Michael as like a big bad man, but as like a genderless figure.
Mm-hmm.
That is like a way of thinking about gender and Freud and all sorts of stuff. Is a little different than the way we like often talk about the film. Is that like he's a guy who's like killing mostly women, right? So I think it's like fun and creative, and I don't know, it's like cool. People often are like, "Oh, I should never read that because I'm not like a film studies person or whatever." And I'm like, it's fine to read and watch things you don't understand. You should just embrace that. Like, go read the things you don't get, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's fun too. I love to do that. I don't know.
And that's how you will then grow to understand said things.
Yeah, exactly. Just go.
Yeah.
Just jump in the deep end. Whatever.
Okay. My second recommendation is not nearly as heady as yours. And again, I'm going to ask you guys to follow me down this path, right? But we spoke about how this movie has birthed a lot of reboots, remakes, sequels. The 16 or 17 Blumhouse version is like, in a way, it is all three. It is remake, reboot, and sequel in some like strange way. But famously, it was co-written by one Danny McBride, who is the star
Was it really?
of Eastbound and Down. So another great TV show that you should use as a palate cleanser after watching Halloween.
What a beautiful, just we're watching an artist. I think
Yeah, that was nuanced. That move
was
right there, that was like some fine work.
like your recommendations are Rube Goldberg machines of logic, and it's masterfully done because we arrive there. I feel like you're playing the Wikipedia game with us. Of like, did you ever play that like in middle school?
Yeah, where you're like you have to like get from one topic to another.
I feel like that's what Raph is now doing. He's entered the stage of this podcast for his recommendations, where he goes, "I need 7 layers of separation."
How do I get to Eastbound and Down from Halloween? I'm going to do
it. Now everyone is getting a peek into how oddly my brain operates.
I love it though. I'm here for it.
No, it's right. Yeah,
we're like, these were legitimately things. Below Deck and Eastbound and Down were legit things that popped into my head while I was watching Halloween.
You know what I could go for right now? question, eastbound
I
and
like
down.
that the implication that like Raph also doesn't understand how his brain works, so that he's like, oh, below deck. Why am I thinking of that? And then has to
No,
go back
I
and
was like, I was
make
watching it and I was like, oh, that's the little girl who grew up to be on Real Housewives. I can't recommend Real Housewives because I don't really watch that, but it is on Bravo and I do love Below Deck. Okay, there we go.
That's on Bravo.
That's
Incredible.
brilliant.
Matt, what's your final
All right.
pre-soup and candy recommendation?
Pre-soup and candy wreck. So, as I alluded to earlier in the discussion, how my confusion between Michael Myers and Mike Myers plagued me for years, made me think of this connection. I highly recommend you check out the Mike Myers horror comedy, So I Married an Axe Murderer. It's phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, it's one of his earlier pieces of work. I think it's post Wayne's World, but maybe concurrently SNL, or maybe just that weird time between SNL and Austin Powers. I think it was like 95, 96. It was also a great example of, like, if you watch that film, you see like, oh, like that's why he started doing the multiple character bits, because he plays the main character who's pretty much a straight-laced guy. He's funny, he's quirky, he's charming, Mike Myers.
Mhm.
But like, he doesn't do the over the top character. He's just a likable guy. He also plays that man's father, who's the Scottish man who
Nice.
who like subscribes to the Weekly World News and yells at his youngest son for having a giant cranium. So I don't want to do it disservice, but when I think of Halloween and you say Mike Myers, I think, oh, an axe. So I Married an Axe Murderer. Check it out. It's a real fun time. It's a good palate cleanser, but it also has a couple of good twists and turns along the way.
Nice. I love it. I've not seen it. I feel like that movie's always on like Hulu.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
All right. So there's that, and then like 20 years, 30 years later, they made a Netflix series about a throwaway joke in So I Married an Axe Murderer. It's called The Triumvirate or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And it's on Netflix. Like, and so like that, the whole Netflix series is based off of a throwaway joke that the old man says about like the 8 wealthiest people in the world meet triannually. Like, so it goes into the funky hilarity that is the cinematic universe of Mike Myers. So that has spawned countless spin-offs and reboots, and knockoffs. But definitely watch it on its own. It's a good time, and it's peak Mike Myers, like just really nailing it. Very charming, very funny, and like every time I watch that movie now, I go, I now understand why I have the sense of humor that I have.
It's all from Mike Myers.
I love that.
Yeah. Not Michael,
Yeah.
Mike.
Nice. Okay. I will do another movie one then, since we're getting back into the movie vein. But what I wanted to do was so we often think of Halloween as like the first of a lot of things, right? So we often think of it as like a prototypical slasher movie, and that it sets the rules. But there were some slashers made before Halloween. So I want to recommend what is like a somewhat famous but not like super well known movie. Is Black Christmas from 1974, a classic Canadian made horror movie, which very much a slasher. The opening kill is also in POV. So that is also really interesting that it connects to Halloween and it's 4 years before Halloween. And then This is not a connection, but it's a fun fact. But it was directed by Bob Clark, who would later go on to direct both Porky's and A Christmas Story. So I don't
That's
know, an
unreal.
awesome,
That is unreal.
an
What a
awesome guy,
filmography.
and like a real a real low budget movie, but like had some things that I think John Carpenter was inspired by when he made Halloween, which I think is cool.
The sad thing is, the minute you said Bob Clark, I'm like, oh, is that the guy that directed A Christmas Story? No. And that is wild. That is so crazy.
Yeah, the 70s and 80s are like peak time for like real like cheap movies made in Canada. They were just like giving money away if you went up there and filmed a movie for real.
Amazing. I feel like that's also been on my watch list for a while.
Yeah, you can, and then they did remake and reboot that like in the 2000s, but the original's awesome. So
amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
For my final recommendation, I haven't done a movie yet, so I'm going to do a movie. This movie is, so obviously Halloween launched the, amazing career of one Jamie Lee Curtis, who ended up going on to win an Oscar in a maybe kind of weaker year for her performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Her co-star, Michelle Yeoh, also won an Oscar, and probably should have been Cate Blanchett, but that's okay, for her performance in that movie. I'm not going to recommend Everything Everywhere, but I am going to recommend another movie with our Queen Michelle, a movie that sadly is not in the canon, but probably should be, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, that should be in the canon for sure, dude.
Amazing movie.
That's a good choice.
Thank you. So I guess now we're on to soups and candies.
Soups and candies.
Yeah.
Soups and candies.
All right, Matt, we're back to you for soups and candies.
All right.
I just keep thinking of Adam Driver in Girls, where he's like, "Good soup." That's what I just keep thinking of right now. Good soup.
Good soup. The soup I recommend, if you're ever in Rochester, you need to go to Mel's Diner. It's in the town of Greece. It's this phenomenal lunch spot that I go to every Friday. They have the best clam chowder, and it's like $6 for a bowl. It's crazy. It's stupid.
That's the best.
It's stupid affordable. So Mel's Diner in Greece, New York, in the Rochester metropolitan area. Can't beat it. And my go-to candy, I am always a sucker for like Sour Patch Kids or Sour Punch straws. Sour Punch straws are always a welcome addition to the Halloween horde.
Hell yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen those in a Halloween bag.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they do like these little single... The kind of similar to like the single Twizzlers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a good one. I like that. And good soup. Next time I'm in Rochester,
dude,
go to Mel's.
Dude, actually, yeah. Well, we need to have a meeting of the minds here. We'll go to Syracuse and Rochester. Have you up?
Yeah.
We'll go get some soup.
We'll talk shop over.
We'll do a full vlog, the whole thing, dude.
Yeah. All right, Simon, what's your...
All right, I think for soup, I'm cheating a little bit because I'm gonna go with a stew, but still soup. It's like a classic like beef stew. It's like classic like get like a huge roast, chop it up, brown it, and then do that beef broth. Carrots, onions, potatoes, add like a little bit of red wine in there, like a little bit, like maybe serve that over some egg noodles or something. Like I think that's just like, it's like, that's what I want, like not before Halloween, but like on November 1st, like when we're like transitioning.
It is very
like
hearty.
Real hearty, when up here, like it's been frosting already overnight, like that's what I want, like that. Like braising for like 3 hours on a Sunday. It just falls apart.
Right?
That's exactly.
That sounds wonderful.
I'm hungry now. Yeah, I mentioned that. So that's my soup slash stew recommendation. My candy thing. I hate to pick on Matt if he picked something sour, but I was always gonna go with something sour. And I want to go with sour Skittles, which is a little different. But I feel like Halloween is like all about the like little burst of excitement, right? Particularly if you've been like working really hard, you come home and all of a sudden there's like trick or treating in the neighborhood. It's like super hype. It's like Skittles are just like what is in a Skittle? Like it's just sugar. It's just sugar in a little candy.
What is
thing.
in a Skittle is one of the best questions that anyone has ever posed.
What is?
You know when they did surgery on a grape, they should have done surgery on a Skittle because I really want to know what's going on.
It's just layers of sugar.
It's like crack.
It's gelatinous. It's whatever the core of a Skittle is. It's gelatinous. I feel like it's hardened corn syrup that's scented to be like cherry grape, whatever.
Exactly. And so I
Not even
when
flavored,
I one
scented.
of those,
Yeah. That's but didn't that come out? Wasn't there like an article about how they don't actually they all taste the same. It's like a scent that makes it different. So like they scent them differently.
Are you telling me my world is a lie? Is that what you're telling me right now? But that is like that candy. It's an insane thing for humans to eat, and I feel like every time I eat one, I'm like my mouth is vibrating, and like I feel like my teeth are gonna fall out.
Mhm.
And the sour ones, it's like another level.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you gotta go sour to get the full effect, fun effect. Kind of like watching the end of John Carpenter's Halloween, right? You get the fun,
It's all attention,
blood
all
pumping,
attention.
Yeah.
Simon, I feel like you are a sour candy kind of guy. I feel like
I am.
you put me on to a lot of you put me on to Fizzy Cola, which is
yeah,
great.
dude.
Fizzy Cola.
But that's not really a Halloween candy. Sour Skittles is a great Halloween candy because like I'm never gonna go out and buy a bag.
No, but you'll get the little one, right?
Do you know how disappointing it is to go? The only place I could find Fizzy Colas was Five Below, and like they don't carry them anymore. I haven't. I'm itching for Fizzy Colas now that you said it, and I don't know where I can get them. I don't know where I can get my fix.
Come down to New York City. I got a few spots.
You got some good bodegas?
Yeah, I got some spots for you.
All right,
for sure.
All right. You come up upstate for the soups. I'll come downstate for the Fizzy Cola.
It's perfect. Amazing. Boom. We'll do a home and home. For my soup, I'm actually not a big soup guy. We've been talking soup this whole episode. And
that's my favorite part. There's no revelation you waited this long. I'm not even that big of a soup guy.
I actually hate soup.
Yeah, no, I like soup, but like I don't make any soups at home. I like in college I would eat soup out of a can, but like I never make.
Yeah.
I make chili, which is great, but I don't know if we're going to consider that a soup.
I'd give it to you.
But what I'm going to go with, I'm going to go full weeb, and sometimes I have made ramen at home.
Oh,
and it's pretty good.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with ramen as my favorite soup. But it's kind of an annoying pick. Like,
that's a good pick.
I get it, dude. You like Japan. Like, what happened to a good old fashioned American soup?
New England clam chowder.
Yeah.
It's got potatoes. It's got clams. It's got whatever the hell the chowder
is. Yeah.
Well, ramen hits to like it's restored, right? Got some pork or something in there, maybe, right? Like ton of noodles. You can make it really spicy.
You can make it super spicy. I don't like it that spicy because I'm not a big spice guy. But you throw some eggs in there, a little bit of seaweed. It's it's good stuff. Good stuff for sure. And for my candy, I feel like I'm super basic, and on Halloween, I'll slam so many mini Snickers.
Oh,
like it's
nice.
It's a very basic, very classic kind of pick, but to me, like every time like a mini Snickers pops up in a Halloween bag, I'm popping that sucker right in my mouth. Oh man. Okay. I think we've all gone fully delusional.
Yeah.
So let's say final goodbyes. Before we say final goodbyes, let's run through all of our recommendations one last time, just super quickly,
Okay.
in case anyone wants to like.
I didn't know I had to remember them, but okay.
Write it down to check out. So Matt, what were your 3?
My 3 recommendations were Mindhunter, the Netflix series, Gravity Falls, that was like a Disney animated show. I think you can find it on Disney Plus. And my film recommendation featuring Mike Myers was So I Married an Axe Murderer.
All right. And then I have my 3 recommendations. Number 1, the British synthwave band Gunship, particularly the self-titled album that John Carpenter appears on. Number 2, Carol Clover's book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws, Gender in the Modern Horror Film. It's sort of classic academic trip, to the horror canon. And then number 3 was the film Black Christmas, 1974, Canadian slasher with an opening POV sequence.
Amazing. I'm recommending 2 TV shows and a movie. First TV show is, of course, Below Deck. You really just have to check out seasons 1 through 10. And then if you like what you see there, come back to me and I'll recommend some more seasons. Second TV show is Eastbound and Down, of course, because who doesn't think Eastbound and Down when you think in Halloween? And my movie recommendation is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, because who doesn't think about that movie and insane kung fu and emotional depths unlike any that we've seen in any film when you're watching Halloween. So there we have it. Simon, Matt, thank you guys so much for joining. This has been an absolute blast of a conversation.
Dude, I had some of the best fun. Let's do this again sooner. I like making this like a yearly thing around Halloween, but let's sneak in, I don't know, like an Easter special.
Ooh.
We'll do an Easter egg special where we pick out all of our favorite Easter eggs. I don't know.
Our favorite
Let's
eggs.
pick a different holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always down. Let me know. I mean, I'm a PhD. I'm to do whatever. You want to have me on your film podcast?
It's no big deal. I'm a doctor. I'll have to bill you because I'm a doctor.
I get paid by the hour. That's why I'm here.
He's even a doctor. Wait, you guys are getting paid for this? That's cool. I don't know who I.
Yeah, my agent will contact you.
Yeah, we'll let you know.
Contact my billing department.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, thank you guys for joining. We will have to do this again soon. This has been an absolute blast. Screenagers, we have more episodes coming up. The season is kind of winding down. I think we only have 4 movies left after this. We're going to be ending November with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So that should be fun. But before we do that, we're going to be talking about a movie that is kind of like a Halloween, Thanksgiving kind of hybrid. I personally think that spooky season should extend at least a week or 2 into early November. I think you should wind down with some more spooky movies. But this movie in particular for next week, I think is one that perfectly fits that in-between time between Halloween and Thanksgiving. We're going to be talking about Get Out. Jordan Peele.
Nice.
Very nice.
Amazing movie. Very much so looking forward to it. One of my favorite movies. So should be a great episode. And Screenagers, I hope to see you there. And as always, I will see you in the meantime in the wasteland. Bye, y'all.